Now, our next guest probably needs no introduction from me, but I will anyway. She is the Deputy Chief Executive of Work and Income, Ministry of Social Development, and that's Patricia Reade. Patricia's public service career began in 1991 as an employment advisor with New Zealand Employment Services, and then as the Operational Policy Manager. She was subsequently seconded to the Office of the Minister of Employment through the period when Income Support and New Zealand Employment Services were merged. Please take the floor. Can you hear me?
Oh, I don't need the mic, I'll speak up. Hi everyone, thank you for taking the time to choose we three to come and listen to us. I've only got 5 slides, so I'll skip through them quite quickly, and so that hopefully we can have some time at the end of this for some questions and answers, which I'm very open to, and I'm sure Graham and John are as well. Just very quickly to look at, so my presentation is focused on what we do in Work and Income to have an employment focus, and within the current policy settings. Just wanted to add that, which, as you know, are going to change possibly from October of this year. But within the current policy settings, this is how we have a focus on employment and work and income. Bit of context, in terms of GDP, you will see that New Zealand is the red line and Australia is the green line. So if we, and the yellow line is Japan and the purplish line is the UK. So in a nutshell, New Zealand had negative employment growth for 5 quarters, and we started to see some growth creeping in the June quarter of 2009, which was only 0.1%, negligible. In the September quarter, I think it was 0.3%, and in the December quarter of last year, it was 0.8%. And in comparison to Australia, you'll notice, who never actually went into recession, technically. So that was the context that we were working with in terms of economic growth, or not. Now, we're feeling reasonably optimistic. I mean, the forecasts in the BFU in May with the budget were more optimistic than they were in the previous forecast in the half-yearly economic fiscal update. Nevertheless, we don't think that the economy is in great shape. And it's a worry if you look at the US and the UK, that are still reasonably weak economies, and they're still supported by what might seem unsustainable investment by government, massive government spending. So in the last 12 weeks, we've had a decline in unemployment benefit numbers, so because you know that the forecasts have been brighter. We have had a decline, and we're now starting to see a tick up with the usual seasonal peak. In relation to demand for our services, these coloured bands represent the main benefit types. So the bottom one is sickness benefit. At the moment we have about 58,000 people on the sickness benefit. The next one up is invalids benefit. We have about 86,000 people on invalids benefit. The green band is domestic purposes. We have about 108,000 on domestic purposes. And the one that is more volatile at the top is unemployment benefit. And it was in free fall, you will see, from January 2001 up until about May 2008, which was just before the economic recession started to bite, when we were at an all-time low on UB of 18,000 people. So we just about knew them by name in each of our service centres. That has now grown to 60,000 since May 2008 as a result of the recession. Some interesting figures within that, those high-level figures, are that Auckland in particular saw a sharp increase, and it was the first region to grow in unemployment. It's also the first region to have a reasonably good recovery in terms of reducing unemployment benefit numbers. So in 2008, Auckland's share of job seekers was nearly 1/3, and now they have nearly 40%. It has hit young people really hard, which is a real concern. So young people used to make up about 1/4 of the number on unemployment benefit, and now they make up 1/3. So that is a particular focus for us. In terms of Māori and Pacific Island, the growth in the year to March 2010 for the total population in UB was 60%. The growth for Māori was 62%, so just slightly above the rest of the population. The growth for Pacific in the year to March 2010 was 75.1%. So all groupings had a growth. Pacific had the highest growth compared to the rest of the population. In addition to the growth in main benefits, we had a growth in second and third tier assistance. So, for example, the number of special needs grants in a year increased by 100,000. So the impact on us in work and income was quite significant volume increases in terms of demand. If we have no, you won't be able to read that, no. Sorry, so I'll take you through it. What we had to do to meet the increased demand for our services, particularly for people who hadn't needed to engage with work and income before, was to adapt our service delivery offering. So it was no longer okay to have a one-size-fits-all approach to people who were coming on to unemployment benefit in particular. They were different. A lot of people had never had anything to do with us, didn't want to have anything to do with us, had been in the same jobs for 20, maybe 25 years, and for the first time found themselves in a position where they needed to come in for our services. So we reviewed what we call our job search service, which is what that flow diagram represents, so that we could assess people and provide them a service that was appropriate for their needs. And it was partly so that we could decide who we didn't need to intervene with because they were going to find their own jobs. And so we assessed them, and our assessments compared to the Australians look real quick and dirty. So we don't have fancy JCSIs and JCAs, essays like the Australians do. We have really 6 main points that we look at. One is their connection to the workplace, recent connection to the workplace. Secondly is their skills, and thirdly is their qualifications, there are a few other things, but those are the 3 main things. And if all of those 3 things look pretty good, then we decide that they're self-directed, we call them, and we pretty much leave them alone. And for the others, they go into what we call the central stream, where we do have work for you seminars, planning and assessment seminars. We deal with people on a one-to-many and a group setting basis, and it is very proactive and quite highly interventionist in terms of helping people find work and matching people to jobs. So that's the job search service. Other people can, this is largely for unemployment beneficiaries. Other people can opt into it, and other people in benefit groups like DPB and SB do opt into the job search service if they want to have a full-on service in terms of help to find work. Now, one of the most important things, just before I move on from this slide, that we did was we set a performance target which was about people not going on to benefit at all within 28 days of fronting up to work and income. So at the front line, they talk about 40, 60, 80, which some of you may have heard about, and where this is an unashamed KPI that we have at the front line for job seekers. And that says that 40% of people, when they front up to work and income, will not go on to an unemployment benefit within 28 days of that first contact. So when the recession happened, we decided that we needed to have a very early performance target to help people get into work even before they needed to get onto a benefit. The 60% target says that 60% of people who are on unemployment benefit won't go from being 13 weeks to 14 weeks on unemployment benefit. And the 80% target says 80% of people won't go from being 26 weeks on the unemployment benefit to 27 weeks. So 60 and 80 existed because that's about preventing people from becoming long-term unemployed. Because we know that once they've become long-term unemployed, it's harder for them to find work. Their self-esteem decreases, their confidence in their skills decreases, and other illnesses, etc., can start to set in that will make it harder for them to get into work. We know that. The 40% was an even earlier intervention, so we talk about working at both ends.